If you want to skip to specific sections, the chapter timestamps are in the description and should also be in the video itself.
Embrace the void.
Deadly aim.
Boom headshot.
Improbable, but inconsequential. Insignificance. This is the legacy of humanity.
Boom headshot, yeah.
So, must
Good evening, gamers. I know I don't upload very often, but I got a special treat for you this time. So this is a Snipe Deadeye using Stormcaller arrow for a clear. And it is some of the most fun I've had across of all of Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. It is an off-meta build. It's not as strong as the stat stackers, etc. But it's still pretty strong. And yeah, it's just fun. Very engaging. Very active play. Alright, so let's move on to the pros. So there are many upsides to this build. It's a great league starter. Levels very fast. Clears pretty fast. On a budget too. So even if you league start this, you can blaze through the campaign with Tailwind and Stormcaller spam and without much trouble, really. Tailwind is great for running to places in large maps, especially Act 3. And yeah, as a budget build, it means it's strong even without good gear. To give you an example, I was easily farming Ultimatum and doing normal T15s to T18s, so not daily infused and juiced and yeah, all that stuff. But like rare T15s, T18s, no problem. And this was with a 30 to 50 Exalt budget. At the time, I think Exalts were around 150 per div. Something like that. So yeah. And it has, despite that, it has a pretty high power ceiling because the more expensive gear you get it, the more it becomes able to do what I did in the intro to Arbiter. That was what? 14, 15 million damage in about 5 seconds or less? No. That's not like button mashing. You got a time snipe, but still, it's pretty crazy. And yeah, it's on that note, it is easy to learn. The rotations are simple. You spam Stormcaller arrow when clearing, and you try your best to time the snipe with barrage up for a single target, like bosses or tanky rares. So simple rotation, simple mechanics. It's pretty easy to understand how to build passives and what to look for on gear. Passives are mostly damage, movement speed, attack speed, and energy shield and evasion bonuses. And gear is more or less the same. You do want to look for some crit damage on the weapons specifically. That helps, and also crit damage on the quiver. But more on that later. And of course, it's very tanky. It has the same high evasion as most Deadeyes, but on top of that, because it is using Series Disdain, the unique helmet, and scaling energy shield bonuses from passives, it gets over double the EHP of a normal Deadeye. So, yeah. And it also has multiple sources of energy shield recovery. So there's the usual reduced energy shield recharge delay, so it starts recharging faster. And then there's two others. Ghost Shroud, which heals back some of the energy shields every time I get hit. And then there is Shock Siphon, which is part of Herald of Thunder. Now, the reason for that is I don't want to put it on Stormcaller and gimp the damage and gimp the clear speed. It procs plenty of times off of Herald of Thunder, especially in very large fights. So, no need to gimp the clear. And then, yeah, there's also several forms of highly spammable crowd control. This means electrocute and maim from Herald of Lightning. Pretty much, if you're firing Stormcaller at a bunch of enemies, they're going to be maimed immediately, 30% less move speed, and they're probably going to get stunned in like 1 or 2 seconds. If they're alive, they're going to get stunned because of electrocute proccing. And then if they somehow manage to reach you and try to melee you, there's always Wind Dancer and the knockback from that. And of course, on top of all that, very high effective health pool. Compared to Deadeye for sure, compared to most warriors really, unless they're stat stacking and have 9k HP. So to put that, to put numbers to those, when you're starting maps with budget gear, like you're fresh out of campaign, you typically will be able to get 4,000 to 4,500 EHP total, so HP and energy shields total, if you buy a bunch of cheap, somewhat well-rolled rares and cap your resists. And then with my kind of gear that I'm using to, clear max difficulty Simulacrum, you can easily get over 6,500 total hit points. And to put that in perspective, that's not counting Tailwind's 30% damage reduction. And if I have Tailwind up and something hits me, I can survive a hit up to 9,500 damage. I can survive a boss slam that does 9,500 damage to me because of Tailwind and because of this extra tankiness, extra energy shield. So those are the pros, very numerous. There are some downsides. Notably, this is not a meta build. So while it's fast, it's not the fastest boss killer. The fastest boss killers are like Lightning Arrow Deadeyes, various expensive stat stackers like Gemling with Pillar of the Caged God, Monks, similar to Gemling, etc., etc. Various Infernalist minion summoners with friggin' skeleton, fire skeletons or ice skeletons, I forget what they're called. But you get the point. And while it is fast at clearing and very safe, it is not the fastest at clearing. And for comparison's sake, the two top builds for just clearing and farming breaches and stuff are the Spark Stormcaller and basically any build of using Herald of Ice. Like, yeah. One hit and the entire screen explodes and shatters every enemy around. That's Herald of Ice. Pretty busted. Pretty funny to see. Anyway, the last downside, and probably the one that deters most players from doing this shit, is that it's hard to master. And what do I mean by that? Like, it's easy to learn, hard to master, yes. The rotations are simple, the mechanics are simple, you know exactly what you need to do, but good luck doing it. Because timing snipe with window of opportunity, and you do need window of opportunity, otherwise you do way less damage. Timing snipe with window of opportunity is pretty unforgiving. Like, it varies based off of how much attack speed you have, which, by the way, gets modified by Tailwind. So the number of Tailwind stacks you happen to have influences that. If you get new gear with higher attack speed or lower attack speed, your snipe timing all of a sudden will change. And yeah. And also, when you're trying to snipe something, you are pretty vulnerable. You're standing still like a sitting duck, charging up a shot. And either you can get stunned out of it, even by certain little hits, or flinched out of it, or some boss will walk up to you and slam you and kill you before you get it off. That's happened to me a few times. Either way, that's it for the intro. And now for the gear and passives. So the first up is Stormcaller Arrow. It is our clear skill. So 50 little guys on the screen, you hit this bad boy and they'll disappear. And what I did was stack elemental damage as much as possible on it, so, and attack speed. So martial tempo, attack speed, scatter shot, more spread. I can hit more enemies on a wider radius. And then primal armament, lightning infusion for the extra lightning damage. Inspiration is tacked on because my gear has become really cracked and there's like a lot of plus skill levels, and that makes my skills really expensive. And inspiration helps a lot with that. But if you're, say, on a budget and using only a 4-link, and I do recommend at least a 4-link, corrupt 3 links if you have to, I would take away the inspiration and I would run the other 4 like that for max damage. If you're still having mana issues, then yeah, you can take out lightning infusion instead of inspiration and roll with that. Either way, you spam this, everything either dies or gets electrocuted with AoE lightning, and go from there. And then the main single target skill and the boss killer skill is indeed Snipe. And here, I highly recommend you use 4 GCPs to quality it to 20%, because by default it's 200% increased crit damage, and with 20% quality, it's 50% more. So, like, that's huge. And then, of course, window of opportunity and super critical for more sweet crit damage and damage bonus. And concentrated effect is an interesting one. So this does work on Snipe. It does not, however, appear on the tooltip, because the Snipe tooltip only... Well, actually, it might. I think it does on the explosion tooltip. Either way, because when you perfectly release Snipe, instead of being a normal shot, it becomes basically an explosive AoE arrow, which means this works on it. And when you're trying to snipe down a boss, you don't care how large the arrow explosions are. You just, as long as they all hit the boss. And so 40% more damage, multiplicative globally, really good. Heft, 30% more maximum physical damage, works out to be at least 15% increased damage. And no, not increased, but another 15% multiplier. And finally, close combat, because I do use dual strings for this, which means that there is a bit of a shotgun spread to the bow, which means the best way to use Snipe for me has been to get up really close and, yeah, treat it as a shotgun. So 25% more attack damage while close is perfect for that. And my Ascendancy also specs to do more damage up close instead of far away. And on top of that, I think my last few levels, I did add Stand and Deliver, which does more damage and does more critical damage within 2 meters of an enemy. So everything combines, and I start doing like 5 to 10 million damage a snipe if I nail it correctly and all my arrows hit. It's pretty nuts. Either way, if you're once again running a budget snipe, just take away close combat, but do make sure you quality as soon as possible and that you have a 4-link by the time you get to maps, or right around the time you start mapping. And then Herald of Thunder. Now, this Herald of Thunder is not there to help with the AoE. It's not there to help with the damage. It is there specifically for crowd control and safety. So that's why I take Electrocute and Neural Overload, because Stormcaller Arrow is nearly guaranteed to shock someone, because that's how it works. The delayed little lightning bolt it calls down has like 800% increased shock chance. And either things die instantly to Stormcaller Arrow, or they get shocked by it. And what this means is I don't need to shock things with Herald of Thunder. And so instead I go for Electrocute and I go for a Neural Overload to proc the Electrocute faster. And electrocute is basically like a 3 to 4 second stun. You'll see them like flailing around a little, all on electricity, wiggling a little, and they won't be doing anything. Now, obviously, you can't electrocute bosses, but all the trash, sure. And on that note, Maim is also pretty useful because it slows enemies down by 30%, and Deadeye's weakness generally tends to be lots of beefy melee dudes running up to her and stunlocking the fuck out of her. Yeah, it's not a fun time. But with this, they reach you 30% slower, or they just die trying to reach you. Very useful. And finally, I don't know what else to put on number 5. This could just be a 4-link, it doesn't matter. I put lightning penetration, because why not? Slightly more damage for it. Maybe somewhat useful versus elemental resistant enemies. Next, we have the 2 buffs and what I call the extra credit attack skill, or the Tailwind Builder. So first the buffs. Wind Dancer, obviously, more evasion, knockback if you get meleeed in the face, and qualitying this is kind of important. It gives you another stack, which is more evasion, and yeah, it's just important because the higher your evasion, the more Ghost Dance heals you. So Wind Dancer and Clarity on the Wind Dancer for the extra mana regen, because I have a spare extra 10 spirit. Because it works out to be exactly 100 spirit with Herald of Thunder, Wind Dancer, Ghost Dance, and Clarity. Perfect. I don't use spirit on my gear, and I don't plan to. Anyway, second buff is Ghost Dance. So my rationale for going Ghost Dance and ignoring Grim Feast is Grim Feast is a win more type of buff. What I mean by that is it's good for trash clearing, but for trash clearing, I'm not really afraid of getting hit for 10,000 damage. I never get hit for 10,000 damage for trash. And yeah, so the only place where having double energy shield would be useful is against boss battles like Xesht, pinnacle bosses. And typically in those, you spawn in and you don't really get a chance to build Grim Feast. So, like Arbiter of Ash, no Grim Feast. Audience with a King, no Grim Feast. Xesht, maybe some Grim Feast from killing the Breach monsters, but realistically, no, not really. And so on and so forth. And also, if you port out to sell or do shit in town and port back in, all that Grim Feast is gone. And it goes on and on. And also, you have to go up to the Grim Feast particles to collect them. So you have to like put yourself out of position. You're not kiting as well. You're not positioning as well. You're not moving through the map as fast because you're focusing on picking them up. Very annoying. Either way, Ghost Dance is just better if you have enough tankiness. If you have enough energy shield and health, it's just better because with the kind of evasion I have with Wind Dancer stacks, I have about 10k evasion, and that's without any really good evasion gear. I heal for 500 energy shield every time something hits me. And by the way, this counts for fast multi-hit attacks like laser beams and shit. I can stand in most laser beams for like 2 to 4 seconds and not see my energy shield go down as it exhausts all my Ghost Dance stacks. Do I recommend standing in lasers? No. But you can do it. This build allows it. And either way, like other little hits, just any hits in general, Ghost Dance will proc. And that is why I have fast forward on it. 30% less duration means Ghost Dance replenish faster. That's all that is. So you get massive energy regen from Ghost Dance, and you also get massive energy regen from Shock Siphon, which I mentioned earlier in Herald of Thunder. If I didn't, then yeah, that's a thing too. 4% of your energy shield regen every time you land a killing blow with Herald of Thunder, which happens quite frequently. So between those, your energy shield regen, you don't have to wait for your energy shield to start regenning. it can regen mid-combat while you're getting hit constantly. And that's pretty damn useful for Delirium and Ritual specifically, where sometimes you do not get any breathing room. Either way, the final thing on the list here is Lightning Rod. Now, this is strictly not necessary at all. It is completely optional. But the reason why I have a level 1 Lightning Rod is it costs no mana, it has the highest attack speed of all the bow skills, and you can see where I'm going with this, and you can see why I put mobility on this as well. If I need to refresh Tailwind, I hit this once, and my 10 stacks of Tailwind get refreshed. They don't poof. If I need to build Tailwind, say a boss is making their entrance, maybe having a little monologue, I have maybe 5 seconds to get 10 stacks of Tailwind. I don't want to have to spam Stormcaller Arrow and Mana Pot twice to do it. So Lightning Rod it is. Gets me to my 10 Tailwind, and then I fucking blow up the boss and blow up whatever else. Faster snipe, faster everything, damage reduction. It's just good to always build Tailwind. So Lightning Rod, really good. It's not damage, it's just Tailwind building. And then Barrage. So I don't just have one Barrage, I have 3 Barrages, and there are 3 very different types of Barrages. So the first Barrage is my main damage builder that has Premeditation, Ingenuity, and Arcane Tempo. The Arcane Tempo is strictly not necessary, but it's kind of nice to be able to activate it a little quicker in case I need to do it in a pinch. And sometimes I do, sometimes I get pushed by a really tanky rare with like Mana Ring and Proximal Intangibility, and there's fucking 20 enemies on the screen also trying to attack me. And there I do need the extra split second to get off that Barrage and then snipe. Either way, yeah, the main Barrage skill has these 3 on it, and that's the one I typically use. The second Barrage, it has nothing on it. It's an empty stock Barrage. It recharges a little slower than the main Barrage, does a little less damage, but it's there as a follow-up to that Barrage. And then finally, the third Barrage I have has Second Wind on it, and these are like my emergency stockpile, my emergency ammo. If for some reason I need to keep shooting snipe, like let's say it's a 80% delirious map, and the boss is stunned but it's not dead, and both my other Barrages are down, this is my go-to. I have 2 stacks of it back to back that I can use, and yeah, very, very little survives at that point. So that is like 1, 2, 3, 4 Barrages in a row, and then usually the main Barrage is off cooldown, and then afterwards the secondary Barrage is off cooldown. So I can get off 6 snipes in a row with this setup if I need to. And yeah, that's up to, was it 5 million damage in snipe on average, if the enemies aren't modified in any way. Yeah, like 30 million damage total before our cooldowns. Not bad. And finally, move on to the gear. So my current gear is pretty high-end, pretty expensive. The most notable is this bow that I crafted. You can see that like it has the highest tier or close to the highest tier in damage. It has the really rare 2 additional arrows mod, it has attack speed, and it even has plus projectile skills. This bow realistically would go for right around a mirror right now. Right around a mirror, maybe a little less. So pretty ridiculous that I was able to craft this bow. And then the other gear, Atziri's Disdain, because it's our main source of energy shield, and like it gives a lot of energy shield. I take it off, I lose like 3,000 to 4,000 energy shield right now. And then the usual high-end wax jacket with a shitload of evasion and energy shield. And I chose one with dual res and a lot of life regen, because Atziri's, you can see like some of the damage does bypass the energy shield. It's a downside, but with a little health regen and a little life on kill, your health pretty much stays topped off in most combats, and if it's a boss, you can always hit a pot or 2 or 3, and that's fine. And of course, like 35% MS, expensive boots, high-end gear. But you don't strictly need this kind of high-end gear. For the quiver, it's like 1 to 2 divs that I got it for. Pretty good deal. But mainly for the quiver, you want increased damage with bows, +2 projectiles. You probably want 30 dexterity or more, so you don't have to spend all your passive points on dex that you can stack int or something else. And definitely increased critical damage bonus, because Snipe is all about crit damage. On that note, that is the reason why I have 2 crit damage soul cores in my dual string bow instead of the usual iron runes for more physical damage. Because it actually does more damage with Snipe. And because my bow is a hybrid physical lightning bow instead of a pure physical bow, I actually lose only about 5% DPS on my Stormcaller arrow if I take away the iron runes. Either way, I have the usual Hand of Wisdom in action and Ingenuity. These are, once again, strictly not necessary, but I have them because I got rich and, I pimped myself out a little bit. They help a lot. They push my builds to the next level. And then Amulet. Astramentus would theoretically do more damage than this, but not much more, like 10-20% more, and I would lose a lot of life and tankiness. This amulet alone gives me like 500 to 600 extra hit points total, and the crit damage and the level of projectile skills on it, it definitely adds a lot of damage to my build. It's no Astramentus, but it's very comparable, and it's much tankier, and it's much cheaper. So rings, the usual. I tried to go for added lightning damage on both rings and life, mana, resists, whatever else I need. So yeah, and then Ingenuity to boost those rings. Life's good. Then also, before I forget, Ultimate Life Flask, Ultimate Mana Flask. So yeah, Life, Mana Flasks, and Charm. I really like Stone Charms on my Deadeye. Yes, you can get frozen and fucked over, but more often than not, it's not you getting frozen that kills you, it's you getting chain stun that kills you. Like, some melee mob will leap attack you and you won't hit space and he'll stun you. And there's 10 enemies next to you, and they could re-stun you if the Stone Charm didn't proc. But because the Stone Charm procs, I can roll away or I can keep firing and get my energy shield back through the energy leech, etc., etc. And life and mana flasks, they're normal, nothing big. 69% for the memes. I went with charges per second regen because I like being able to not worry about regenning them through kills. Say it's a prolonged boss battle, or I just am really sucking and having a bad day and I missed 10 snipes in a row. These flasks will keep regenning and they'll have my back. On the next screen, we have... so I was talking about how I was able to easily farm Ultimatum with only a 30-50 EX budget. These were some of the rares that I used in place of what I have on me right now. I don't remember the rings and the amulet. They were also pretty crappy. But these are some decently well-rolled rares. You can see it's not even an expert dual string bow, it's an advanced one, but this was enough for me to 3 to 4 shot all the bosses in Ultimatum, including the Tornado Bird, as long as I nailed my snipes. And like, yeah, that quiver cost me like 20 to 30 exalts or some shit. It was pretty cheap. I'm surprised it was that cheap, but hey, like, people want perfect quivers or they don't pay, I guess. And the Wayfarer jacket, decently high evasion rating energy shield, nothing to write home about. It helped me with my chaos resists, it helped me with my resists, and the life regen helped too. And same for the other rares, they helped in some capacity. Obviously not as much as my current gear, but they helped. And that's about it for the gear. And here we have the passive tree. Now, it doesn't matter too much in what order you go, but in the beginning, I would recommend going down and getting the projectile damage. The little upside down U at the bottom there. And once you get that, I'd recommend going a little to the right and down and getting all the quiver bonuses, so the master fletching nodes. And past that, it's like really up to you where you want to go. I went up first, and then I got a bunch of bonuses from the starting monk skill area. So like skill speed, mana regen, added elemental damages of all sorts. It was pretty useful. And then I went higher and higher, and I got most of the damage nodes. And finally, when I reached maps, I started to finally worry about getting getting the evasion and energy shield nodes and filling that out. But before you reach maps, you don't really need to worry about getting the tankiness nodes. You can get all the damage nodes first, make sure you're set there, because all it takes is purchasing and equipping one Ghost Wraith to basically make you tanky throughout the whole campaign. It's no big deal. The main component of your tankiness, of course, will be a Ziri's Disdain, and you can get a pretty cheap one that's like a max 30% extra health roll. Beyond that, the corrupted ones can reach up to 37% extra health. The 37% gets pretty expensive, like 5 to 10 divs or more, something like that. I think it's more. The 36% one I'm wearing, I got for, I don't remember, 4 divs or something. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I want more energy shield. That sounds good. Well, yeah. And then that is the passive tree. One thing to note in the passive tree is the jewels that I slotted. They're all rare jewels. They're nothing special. The blue jewel that I slotted has a 2% mana on kill and 2% life on kill. The emerald jewels are all like a 15% bow or projectile damage and 20% damage to unique enemies, and then 4% either attack speed or bow attack speed. So in total, each emerald gives me 4% more attack speed, 15% more damage. Well, not more damage, 15% increased damage, Path of Exile terminology, and then 20% increased damage versus specifically rares and uniques, so the big boys. And yeah, I definitely feel the difference if you get these emeralds. Now, each emerald like that cost me around 1 div. Some of them cost me less when people were trying to quickly sell them, so they're pretty cheap. And if you don't want to buy like 5 emeralds for a div each, just use whatever the hell in the slots. And yeah, just find a way to get mana on kill back, and either through the bow, through the gloves, or through the jewel like I have, and you'll be fine. But you do want a little mana on kill, and you do want to like sometimes spam mana potions if you're trying to spam down a particularly tanky pack of mob. Like let's say it's Delirium or Ritual or whatever, and you're under geared. That will do it for the gear and the passive trees. And now, because I want to show off a short little montage of bossing with the Snipe build. Enjoy.
Take that, bitch!
Bullseye!
Boom, headshot! Boom, headshot!
shot.
I can dance all day! I can dance all day! Try to hit me! Try to hit me! Come on!
Red fire blooms. We stretch the thread of reality's coiling lies. We call, we command.
What can I say? There's nothing like the rush of hunting people down and killing them. I mean, my heart's beating, my hands are shaking, but I'm still shooting. I'm still getting the headshots, like boom!